welcome to my show today, Sarah. I really appreciate you joining me. Was there someone or something that inspired you to get into the practice of law?
Oh, absolutely, my father. My father was an attorney. I've often referred to him as the legal equivalent of a country doctor, and he practiced for many years, helping the community, and had very strong feelings about the importance of the civil justice system. So dinner table conversations in my house from the time I was very small had to do with the importance of the civil justice system. So that's what I was raised with, and he was clearly my inspiration.
And having a father who was an attorney, is that what really inspired you to go into law, or was there a particular impact event or a moment where you thought, this is where I'm heading?
I didn't go into law immediately out of school. I did other things, and I was never quite satisfied in those other arenas that I was in, and I'd start thinking back that the impact that my father had on people's lives was enormous, and he was enormously well respected in the community that I grew up in. And the community was, much of the population of the community were people that had been in California. I grew up in California. And many of the people in our community were people whose families had been there since before California was ever a state, and just, wonderful people. And my father was their lawyer, and the one that they came to. And one of the things that I observed in that process was how quickly my father could take people who were, when people come to a lawyer, they're in some kind of trouble, whether it's financial or they've been injured or whatever. And so my father used to say they're kind of in a hole, and they need your help to get out of that hole. And he said, you need to look, he would look at people and say, this is what I'm going to do. I want you to quit worrying. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and everything's going to be fine. And I was just, I wanted an opportunity to do that if I could do it.
So I hear that you ease the stress for your clients. I know it's a very stressful arena to play in. What about for yourself? How do you deal with your own personal stresses that can mount during a course of a litigation?
That's a little more difficult. You get to feeling very responsible for people, and you can, and very often, when you're in the circumstance that you're trying to help someone who's, suffered a pretty severe loss, you align your interests with theirs, and you feel responsible. And if you're going through periods where you're concerned about whether or not you're going to be successful in this, that can be very, very stressful. How do I deal with it? I just have to work through it. I just have to work through it and just keep trying to do my best. And I do find, and this is an interesting aside, you get into that situation, you find your clients begin comforting you, and when people understand that you're there for them no matter what, even if you're not successful, the effort is probably as important to them as anything in many situations.
Well, what a great quality to have, though, to be able to be so transparent to your clients, to realize that they can bring kind of comfort and support to you as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we have more in common with people than we know sometimes. And many times my clients are just like me. They're mothers or grandmothers, or they have an ill spouse, or you have a lot of things in common. And when you understand that, and when you have an opportunity to visit with people and understand that you have a number of things in common, then the relationship, I think, is enhanced by that. So many of my clients remain my friends.
So what area of law are you involved in?
I work primarily, obviously, for plaintiffs. We represent people who are injured. I rarely am presented with the opportunity or elect to take the opportunity to represent defendants. It happens periodically, but people have been injured. I work primarily in the pharmaceutical side. We do a lot of representing people who've been injured by drugs. Okay. And I work very closely with Tommy on the pharmaceutical side. We've handled a lot of, going back to the FinFin litigation. Actually, even before FinFin, we handled what we call a mass tort case, where we have a number of hundreds of clients that we represent, of a group of psychiatric hospitals that were putting people in psychiatric hospitals as long as their insurance benefits would pay. Number of children involved in that, and it's a very damaging thing for children. And Tommy came across this litigation, and he spoke to me about it, and I said, that sounds like something we need to be doing. That's outrageous. And so we started that back in the early 90s, and since then we've had a number of mass torts, primarily pharmaceutical, and I work with him on that. We have some other big cases that I work very closely with Tommy, and then I have individual cases, injury or death cases, where people have been injured or killed in either accidents or on the job, etc. But primarily pharmaceutical.
What's been your most exciting, memorable legal moment?
Whoa, I've had a number of them. I'm working on 2 cases right now that I am very passionate about, and I've had some very exciting moments in those cases, and I hope that they will be successful. I have to say probably one of my very first cases, if I think back about it, was a case that Tommy handed to me years ago. I hadn't worked for him 6 months. We hadn't been together, and we've been together over 20 years, so it's a long time ago. But he handed me this case, asked me to look at it, and it had to do with an insurance company that was denying benefits to a 5-year-old child with cerebral palsy. And the child had, of course, enormous medical needs. And Tommy asked me to look at the case, and I looked at it, and I said, I think this is something we need to do. Somebody needs to step in and help this family, or this child will not get medical care, but it's going to be a difficult case. Health insurance involves some federal statutes, ERISA, et cetera, that are very difficult, can be difficult for plaintiffs to wade through. Ultimately, we managed to settle that case. We managed to settle that case with the insurance carrier, and we got their maximum coverage. And we were told that it's the first time they had ever paid out that kind of money on a claim. And at the end of the settlement process, the child's grandfather, who was a big, strapping, tough, blue-collar kind of guy, I really liked this family, they were good people, burst into tears and came over and hugged me and said, I don't know what we would have done without you. Now, I'm sure there are many lawyers in town could have done the same job for them, but that, to me, was kind of the highlight of my career, and it's kind of driven me since to know how much my efforts and Tommy's efforts meant to that family.